if you think, well, we don't have a corporate culture or an association culture, well, yeah, you do. So I would urge everyone to be intentional about creating the atmosphere and the ecosystem they want and they would aspire to within their community. You can do it. I mean, you don't have to be the no police all the time and telling people no pets, no poop, no parking. There's ways to talk to people differently. There are ways to enforce things differently. And no, it may not be the quickest way from point A to B, but it'll be the healthiest way to have that more holistic, intentional method of managing the community.
HOA Insights, common sense for common areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Robert Nordlund of Association Reserves.
And I'm Julie Adamen of Adamen Inc. And this is HOA Insights, where we provide common sense
for common areas. Well, welcome to episode number 25, where we'll be speaking with regular co-host Julie Adamen on the topic of maintaining a healthy pool of volunteers to run your association. In the community association industry, that's critical because volunteers carry the entire community association industry on their shoulders. Well, in case you haven't had a chance to listen, I want to encourage everyone to check out our last episode, number 24, which was a great discussion with Ariel Hansford of First Service Residential on the topic of keeping your owners safe in emergency situations. Remember to care about your people, not just your common areas. And if you missed any other prior episodes, take a moment after this episode to subscribe to this podcast on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also listen from our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or watch on our YouTube channel. And if you have a hot topic, a crazy story, or a question you'd like us to address, you can contact us at 805-203-3130 or email us at podcast@reservestudy.com. So, Julie, thought we could start today's program with one audience question. And this one is from Sandy from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Our board is in its 4th year. How can we find replacements so we can retire from the board?
Well, first thing is start looking 4 years ago. But the next thing is that, well, this is part of a whole larger discussion, Robert, because we can answer Sandy's questions, but this just doesn't apply to the board. It applies to all kinds of volunteer positions within the community association environment. So let's chat a little bit about what we have volunteer health. We said the volunteer health, and by that we mean the whole ecosystem of volunteers. And I think the hard part, first of all, for boards is that, the boards are like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm a volunteer here. I'm not getting paid. What do I have to worry about other volunteers? Well, because much like, is it Sandy in Santa Fe?
Yes, Sandy from Santa Fe.
Much like Sandy in Santa Fe, because you don't want to be a board member forever, and you need someone to come and take your place. But also because community associations operate on the backs of volunteers. Now, you may have a professional manager, that may be a portfolio manager who has your account plus several others, or it may be a dedicated on-site manager. And that person, yes, does manage a lot of the volunteer experience, but without the board setting that tone and setting the platform for successful volunteer management, it becomes exponentially more difficult for boards to find not only replacement for volunteers as people rotate in and out, or they, move on or something like that, but for their own positions. So that's, I think, where we'll start talking about it. I think Sandy will find her answer somewhere in here.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken before about what are we doing as far as creating the chemistry or the character of the association. And so, like you started out with saying, well, you needed to do that 4 years ago. The character of the association is something that you want to be obviously a welcoming. It's not just a real estate, it's the people that populate it. And so how do you create the character that got you involved in the board? I'm speaking to the board members here. What drew you in? Was it a particular problem that you wanted to solve? Were you being volunteering your time for the good of the community. We want to make sure that the right systems are there in place, and so it's not a man-killer type of job, and you're not sucked into something that's devastating. So that's what you were talking about, Julie. It's bigger than just a board member position. It's all the volunteers. It's working with the people and creating an environment where is the right word, rewarding?
Yes, as rewarding as it can be, but it actually can be incredibly rewarding. I mean, I like to refer to it as an ecosystem. So it's the volunteer health, but it is its own ecosystem. And that includes the board, it includes the volunteers, and of course, it includes the community as a whole. You know, in our end of the industry, and so I've been a board member, sat on 2 boards at one time, and because we're moving, I recently got off of both of them. But it was a tremendously rewarding experience. But the reason talking about the reason people volunteer was that the one I live in right now, it's a small association. And the reason I volunteered was because about 12 or 13 years ago, the gentleman, it's just a small place, right? We had 3 board members, but only one person does anything. But the gentleman who had been in charge of all of that pilfered about $20,000 from the association. So that's how I got involved. So that wasn't a man killer. It was doing the right thing.
Right. There was a problem to solve, and so you jumped in, and with your skill set, you were able to right the ship.
Yep. And convince the rest of the association, which obviously isn't large, but still had to be convinced that to right the ship, we needed D&O insurance, and I would not serve on the board without it. So dues, which are really small because we're really a water district, but the dues doubled in one fell swoop, but they all voted for it. There wasn't a single no vote. So because they knew, that they couldn't put themselves in that position again.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm thinking, I think we've spoken about this before, you and I, like your association is a water district. So the monthly assessments or quarterly assessments, they probably weren't a big number. So twice a small number is still a small number.
Is it? Well, yes. And if you're talking about how much we're on a well, so when you talk about how much people pay for water in any suburban area, I mean, I live in Western Washington State right now, and the water, if you're buying it, shockingly, because we're full of water everywhere, is very expensive. So where we are, no, it's not that much, but it's still a mental thing to get out to get through to people. But anyway, I mean, talking about why you don't want it to be a man killer. For me, that was not a man killer. However, because this is my industry, this is my business, I'm an expert in it, and I could do it with my eyes closed. But for other people, no, that would have been a man killer. They just happened to have someone who could do it. So for boards, in the larger picture in associations, you always have to remember that, the more functional your community association is, and that means operationally functional and politically functional, the more pleasant the experience is going to be for everyone. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of that responsibility to set that tone is with the board. I mean, you signed up for it, and maybe you didn't know it, but you're in it now. And so that is up to you on how the tone of the association. So once you have set that tone, it starts at the top, and the bottlenecks are at the top too, but the tone starts at the top. And if it's a good tone, it flows down through the rest of the community. Now, how that relates to the volunteers is, a board that is functionally and operationally doing a good job understands there are certain things that need to be in place to attract those volunteers, like Sandy needs to take her place as a board member over a period of time. And I'm not talking about a year or 2 years. I'm really talking about over the life of the community. Now, I know boards change, so things kind of ebb and flow, right?
Right.
But yeah, exactly. But overall, the goal is to continually have a pipeline of people who are willing to serve. And maybe they're on the landscape committee this year. Maybe next year they move to the architectural committee and they're a good volunteer. And the following year, you're like, would you like to be on the board? And that's how you bring those people up.
Yeah. Let me stop you there and let's talk about that pipeline concept, because I think that's a great thing. My notes prior were there's the board, there's the committee, there's the owners and the renters. Basically you have different types of people involved in the association. And I think when we're talking about the volunteers, again, that carry this entire industry on their back, there's the board members are in charge, there's the committees, is there also another step below that are the special projects like the 4th of July picnic or the election committee or someone to help with getting the ballots out, just whatever it is, just a small project so they can just help them have success?
For a day or two. I mean, that's actually a wonderful place to get new people to come in because you're not asking for a ginormous commitment of time, which you architectural committees out there, especially, and landscape committees, you guys are pretty much busy all the time. Right. And unless someone, maybe that's why people who are out of the workforce, they're retired. That's why they spend so many volunteer hours because they have the time. If you are still, working 40 or 50 hours a week at whatever job you have, it's difficult to put that in, or you may have that and kids at home or something. It's really, really hard. But yes, those kind of, like the 4th of July committee would be like the ad hoc committee, so it's just put together for a short amount of time for one specific purpose and then it's disbanded afterwards. Great spot to have people. I mean, even if that committee needs help, exactly like taking tickets for the barbecue that's coming up, just someone to stand there and take tickets or, that kind of thing. Just one thing, one off.
So they can have success.
Yes.
And they can say, that was good. And And from my point of view, I love people having an idea that this is community. This is our association. And I play a role in it. I'm not just the owner of unit number 13. I have a part in making this place a better place, even if it's just taking tickets for the barbecue.
And that's a part of the satisfaction of the experience. So let's talk about the first thing I'm going to get to that satisfaction of experience here. Everyone needs to remember, board members and committee chairs and stuff, remember that though you guys are all volunteers, you have to manage the volunteers underneath you. And I don't mean micromanage them and tell them what to do. I mean, manage them in the sense that you need to provide the platform for success for your committee and for boards, for all your committees. And the platforms of success start with just a couple of things. And one is remember that just like you, that people volunteer for satisfaction of participation in the process. So they're not getting a paycheck and you're not getting a paycheck, but they're not down 2 levels down. They're not either. And you want them to have a satisfying experience. It may always not be fun. It may not be perfect, but if something good comes of it, then they feel like they are part of that. And indeed, they are part of that process. So always remember that. And one of the ways that boards should be providing a good way for them to provide that, the platform is to have committee guidelines for all of your committees, for all of them. And in fact, Robert, I can send some committee guidelines to you for you guys to put up on the website if people want to download them.
We'll have that in the show notes.
Sure, have it in the show notes here. And how do they get the show notes?
On the website. So it'll be hoainsights.org. And I think it's one of the tabs on the website. And you can go to the episode and get the show notes, and you'll see Julie and my smiling face and outline and any attachments that we have for it.
Any kind of attachments that we have. Yeah. Right. And so I'm happy to share them with anybody. I mean, they're obviously generic, but they can be tailored to anything. And what they entail, the guidelines, and it's really simple. They put together the purpose of the committee. So if it's the landscape committee, certainly has its purpose. It's not in charge of architectural things, in charge of landscape things. The size of the committee, you could say 3 to 5 members or whatever it is, depending on if you have a very large association with ginormous green belts, you might have 7 members. My feeling is the most efficient committee is a committee of 1, but that's not really practical. And I know all you board members think the same thing. Don't tell me you don't think it. So also their relationships with various vendors, if that indeed does apply. Oftentimes trusted landscape committees actually interface directly with the landscape company because they've created this relationship. And then of course, and also how they report and when they report to the board, whether they report in writing, whether they report once a quarter, once a month, whatever it is. Those general guidelines give the committees a solid platform to launch off of and to operate from. So providing that kind of thing is number one on that. And, another thing for you board members to remember and you committee chairs, when you're looking for new people to bring in, right person, right place.
Right.
believe me, I understand when you're looking for volunteers, sometimes it's really hard to find anybody and you just want to plug a semi-warm body into a place, just prop them up like Weekend at Bernie's. But if at all possible, fit them where they belong. If you have a social committee that's going to be in charge of the parties, usually the CPA is not going to be a good person to be in charge of that unless they're unlike most CPAs I know. CPAs should be in charge of the finance committee. That's their bailiwick. It's how they think. And so that's the kind of thing, I'm oversimplifying this, of course, but you understand what I'm talking about. That's the kind of thing. So guidelines, right person, right place. And first of all, always remember why they serve. They serve for satisfaction and participation in the process. And that's this is the whole beginning of the ecosystem, the healthy ecosystem for volunteers and volunteer management.
Hi, I'm Kevin Davis, the president of Kevin Davis Insurance Services. Our experienced team of underwriters will help you when you get that declination. We provide the voice of reason, someone who will stand by you. Our underwriters bring years of knowledge to our clients that can't be automated by technology or driven by price. As a proud ANWINS company, we bring true value to your community association clients. We are your community association insurance experts.
And now we're back. Julie, we were talking about the guidelines, the pipeline, the satisfaction, creating the framework so they can have success. Take us up with that. What you spoke about having some resources in the show notes. Are we talking a few sentences? Are we talking a paragraph? Or what's that really look like?
I'm going to put, for the show notes, an actual set of committee guidelines. Now, they are generic, but I mean, it's, I would say it's probably 8 to 10 paragraphs. And obviously, boards take it, you do, cut and paste, do you with those, right? So, but whatever it is, and if you have any questions, you can find my email address, I believe, on the website there. Feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions with this.
Yeah, but I like your idea of understanding that it's all about success and satisfaction because, again, they're doing it as a volunteer. So the question is why? I love the idea of building community, but hopefully that's somewhere in their heart. Maybe have to blow on that flame to get that going and think about the pipeline. What does that actually look like when you are looking for someone? Do you wait for them to volunteer or does the board reach out? Is there almost like a nominating committee or how does that work?
Well, for board members, for people to come up as board members, but that's different than the nominating committee for board members to run for the board. But if you are looking at people who you want to run for the board as board members, sometimes you have to take who volunteers because honestly, you're looking for that warm body or that semi-warm body who will take the place. But if you have a successful pipeline, and it's not instantaneous, it will be built over a period of time. But if you have that successful pipeline and you're looking to the people who have migrated up in the committees to maybe a committee chair or just someone who's really great, they're a big thinker, they're not going to micromanage, they understand the culture and want to participate in creating even more culture, better culture within the community association, because whether you all know it or not, that all associations have a personality, and I always liken them to some kind of a dog, because when you get the Labrador Retriever personality, that is the best one ever. And then you get the Golden Retriever, and it's really good, but it's a little goofy. It's kind of like the Lab, but a little goofier. And then you get down to the little yippy dogs. Well, they're manageable, but they're always yippy. And then you have the pit bulls. And if you're living in a pit bull one, my deepest sympathies. I have managed several of you in the past, and it just is what it is. But so what I'm saying is that if you have a good culture and you want to maintain that culture, look for people who will support your efforts in that and not undermine those efforts to create that culture. So if they're a great committee chair, you might want to approach them. And I would say make a personal appeal first, call them on the phone, go talk to them, see them on the golf course, whatever you're doing, and just say, look, we could stand a good board member and you're a really good committee chair, been doing it for a while. What do you think about being on the board? And of course, they all hem and haw at first, even if they're busy committee members, because they know even that is more work. And board members, the first thing I'm going to tell you is do not stretch the truth or fib about how many hours it takes to be a board member, because it's always a lot more than you realized when you got on the board. I mean, most, don't forget when you got on the board, they said, oh, it's only 2 hours a month. And, after a month, you're like going, holy moly, it's a lot more than that. Be honest
is it only
about
me
it.
Or is it, am I
No,
spending?
I know. No, it's not only you. But be honest about that because, and actually, if they have been involved in the association for a while, they know it already. So just be honest about it and tell them what some of the issues that are coming up and things that are going to need to be handled, as well as the positive aspect. And remember to say it. There's a reason you're on the board. And like Sandy, she may be ready to be getting off that board, but you can't, say, oh, it's just been horrible. Now it's beating me down. Because they probably can see that, but you have to emphasize and be truthful about the positives of it because there is tremendous satisfaction in seeing an organization that, as you know, can fall to bleh in a really short amount of time, to see that buoyed up and kept at a particular level due to your efforts, yours and your teammates' efforts to keep that at a certain level. It's tremendously satisfying.
Yeah.
And no, you don't get paid for it, and you likely do not get very many attaboys or thank yous for it. But it's satisfying. And that's the thing to let people know. It truly is.
Yeah, connecting the dots that there is satisfaction there. It's not just drudgery. It's not, in my mind, doing the laundry, paying the bills, just drudgery tasks. You got me thinking back to my background, and I came onto the board because of an emergency also. The board had resigned, and I was one of the few homeowners who happened to be in the room, and they asked me to be on the board, and that was that. So it was a crisis type of situation. You got on the board in a crisis type situation. But what did I enjoy about that? I enjoyed that we realized what the true financial status was of our association. I think we did a painting project, and we passed a special assessment. And those are tough things, but I remember being at the annual meeting saying our home values have gone up by about $10,000 per unit. And that is a fun thing. And that is rewarding. And yes, it took some hours, but boy, there's a lot of satisfaction. I'm feeling it right now. I get a little tingly. As a young man, I made $10,000 outside of my paycheck, which was a very cool thing.
And board members, I want you all to listen to what he just said. You have to remember, it's not just, oh, we got this done. How much are your units worth now? Have they gone up in value? That's due to the leadership that happens within the community. Perfect, Robert. Perfect.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I made $10,000. And I realized, wow, 71 units. A lot of people made $10,000. And I, do the math, and that's a fun thing. And you realize
almost $1 million, close shy of $1 million.
Just shy of $1 million. And that is all of a sudden you realize this is time well spent. I want to come back to, you talked about grooming the committee members for board members. That committee member who maybe has been on the architectural committee or landscape committee or whatever is going to wonder, okay, who's going to take my job on the committee? Well, that is indeed a pipeline. So you need to be always looking around. Can you talk about the entire pipeline? It goes from homeowners to committees or to spot projects, committees, board members. And what happens to board members that have had a good experience? Are they ambassadors?
Absolutely, they're ambassadors. Let's talk about the pipeline first, then we'll move up to that. So, in fact, I would say that even within the committee guidelines, which I'm sad to say are not in the ones I'm going to post up, but for all of you board members, when you're going to adopt these committee guidelines, I would put a line item in there that just says, always be on the lookout for new committee members. And not just say it there, but as you interact with your committee members, especially you board presidents, you are the leaders 99.9% of the time of the organization. And when you're touching bases with your committee heads, you want to say, is there somebody new? Is somebody coming up? And as you're looking down the road, board members, you're looking down the road at about 2 years, you want that guy to take your place on the board. Who's going to take his place? So you have to keep reminding him or her that they have to look in their committee or new people to come into the committee who will be able to take up their spot. It is a pipeline, and that is part of the healthy ecosystem of volunteers. Now, obviously, it does not work all the time. It's an imperfect system because, we're dealing with nothing but people, all volunteers. I call it life on the bomb squad because something could blow up at any time. Somebody moves, somebody gets ill, something, and boom, all of a sudden, everybody's left holding the bag. But as best as you can, if you have at least a relatively functional pipeline, you will have a bead on someone to come up and take the place of those key committee members. And then you as board members are looking at those committee members to step up and take your spot. So that's the pipeline. And for you board members that have left the board, if you have had you all can testify to this. If you've had a satisfying experience, not only will you tell other people it's been a satisfying experience, but some of you get back on the board a few years later because there's a reason for that. You kind of liked it somehow or the other, right?
Yeah. Well,
but always let people know that.
If you build a culture where it is community and you find doing things satisfying, and maybe as a board member, you realize I was busy running the association, I have a pet project that I would like to get done. I would like to build an annual Labor Day event. That would be so great or when the trees turn color in our neck of the woods, or we need an emergency procedure and we need a committee to develop emergency procedures for our association. Whatever it is, that person with a great idea can create a committee and plow more great things into the association that they never had time to do because they were busy as a board member.
Yes.
And then I can start to see that the pipeline become a cycle where all of a sudden you have happy things going on, good things going on. You don't have people burdened. And clearly, carrying this entire industry forward is a heavy load. But if you have fresh people that you can say, can you help? And they say, oh, yeah, I could do that. And they realize it is satisfying. And you can build that. My rewards here, the positives, the rewards, the satisfaction. Then you're not stuck like Sandy that is just been so busy with my head down doing the board member job that I look up and we don't have a pipeline.
Right.
That's got to be a harsh thing to think about.
It is. And Sandy's not alone. I would say that's probably at least 50% of the associations out there because it's the nature of the industry. But, I guess I wanted to make one final major point to boards and committee heads is that you must be intentional in how you are managing the community overall. And that has to do with its operations. It has to do with its leadership. It has to do with its culture, and it has to do with the ecosystem of the volunteers themselves, which includes you, by the way, board members. If you think, well, we don't have a corporate culture or an association culture, well, yeah, you do. It just walked in there on its own feet because you were not intentional about it. So I would urge everyone to be intentional about creating the atmosphere and the ecosystem they want and they would aspire to within their community. You can do it. I mean, you don't have to be the no police all the time and telling people no pets, no poop, no parking, the 3 P's of community management. There's ways to talk to people differently. There are ways to enforce things differently. And no, it may not be the quickest way from point A to B, but it'll be the healthiest way to have that more holistic, intentional method of managing the community.
Julie, I like that. Writing down intentional and thinking about just the little things that you can do that might be at the board meeting instead of being at the head table while people filter in. Maybe you as the board president stand at the door and you just say, hello, welcome. And you can do the little things like that could to welcome people to participation, to our community. So many little things that you can do. Well, thank you, Julie. It's, as always, great talking with you. And we hope you learned some HOA insights from our discussion today that helps you bring common sense to your common area. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing you can do is to engage in the conversation. Email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.